Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack the absolutely bizarre history of the internet. I mean, we literally interact with it every single second of our lives, right? But how often do we actually stop to think about the plumbing underneath? Today, we're going on a journey all the way from Cold War paranoia to modern day AI to figure out why one single brilliant innovation, a concept called packet switching, literally changed everything about how our world operates. So, to understand this, we've got to rewind to an era where early computers were basically just isolated, lonely thinking rocks. We had somehow figured out how to harness electricity and trick these rocks into doing math, but they were entirely solitary. If you wanted to move data from computer A to computer B, well, there was no Wi-Fi. You actually had to write that data onto a giant magnetic tape, walk outside, hop in your car, and drive it across town. People affectionately call this a sneaker net because you used your sneakers. And honestly, for about 2 decades, a human driving a car was literally the fastest communication network on Earth. So how on earth did we go from physically driving tapes around to the interconnected globe we live on today? Well, it kicked off with a massive geopolitical panic. Back in 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik. Now, it was really just a metal ball that beeped, but it completely terrified the US government. In a sheer panic to never fall behind technologically again, they spun up an agency called ARPA. Fast forward a bit, and the U.S. Air Force hands this researcher at the RAND Corporation, a guy named Paul Barron, a genuinely terrifying military problem. They asked him, how can our command and control links survive a nuclear first strike? See, at the time, the whole phone network ran on what's called circuit switching. This meant that two machines had to reserve one dedicated physical end-to-end line for their entire conversation. If a nuclear strike, or honestly even just a falling tree, broke a single link in that chain, the whole connection instantly died. And for national defense? Yeah, that was completely unacceptable. To solve this existential threat, Paul Baran just threw out the entire fragile concept of circuit switching. Instead, he introduced this brilliant, incredibly resilient idea called packet switching. He asked a crazy question. Instead of relying on one continuous, dedicated line that could easily be severed, what if you didn't need a direct physical pipe at all? What if the data itself was actually smart enough to find its own way through a chaotic, broken network? And this idea right here, this is the exact catalyst for the entire modern digital world. Instead of sending a massive, unbroken message down one fragile pipe, you chop it up. You slice it into small, independent little packets. Then you slap a destination address on each one and just let them scramble across the network entirely on their own, navigating through whichever routes happen to still be standing. Once they reach the other end, they reassemble back in order. This was a game changer. It meant you could destroy half the network and the surviving packets would just dynamically route themselves around the blast radius. It was decentralized, it was highly resilient, and it was just utterly revolutionary. ARPA absolutely loved this radical idea. So much so that in 1969, they decided to actually build it, calling it the ARPANET. They fired up the system to send the very first packet switch message from a computer at UCLA 350 miles up the coast to a research institute in Menlo Park. The researchers were so excited, they started typing the word login. They got the L, they got the O, and then, boom, the entire system crashed, right? A pretty humble beginning for a technology that was about to take over the planet. But the underlying packet switching, it actually worked. And now it was time to scale. After 1969, things just started moving incredibly fast. By 1971, we got email and the @ symbol, but a new roadblock popped up. All these different networks being built couldn't actually share packets with each other. They spoke different languages. They desperately needed a universal translator. Enter TCP/IP. It was invented to standardize how we chop up data, ensure it gets delivered, and assign every single machine a unique address. When the whole world flipped the switch to TCP/IP in 1983, the true internet was born. And it was quickly followed by DNS, which basically acted like a giant global phone book, turning those clunky, numbered addresses into human-friendly domain names we could actually remember. Okay, so here's the crucial point. By the late 80s, we had this incredibly robust global network shuttling packets everywhere. But it was kind of boring. It was this rigid tool used almost exclusively by academics. That is, until a British scientist named Tim Berners-Lee, who was working at the CERN particle physics lab over in Switzerland, had an idea. He wrote up this proposal to link all the information trapped on these different computers together. And when his boss read the proposal, he actually scribbled this legendary, hilariously understated reaction right across the top of the paper. He wrote, "Vague but exciting." Well, that vague but exciting proposal turned into the World Wide Web. Tim Berners-Lee literally single-handedly invented HTML, HTTP, and the URL. He built the very first web browser and the first web server. Fun little aside here, he actually ran it on a computer with a sticky note slapped on it, literally begging people not to unplug it, because if they did, his entire internet would go down. But honestly, his absolute greatest contribution wasn't even technical. He took this massive breakthrough, this incredible system that gave a beautiful, readable interface to all those scrambled packets of data, and he just gave it away, completely for free to all of humanity. He believed it should belong to everyone.
Now, at first, this web was still just a giant, ugly wall of blue text. But in 1993, a college kid named Mark released Mosaic, which was a browser that finally displayed images in line right next to the text. He turned this into Netscape Navigator, and overnight, it became the most popular software on Earth. The information superhighway had officially hit the mainstream. Suddenly, those invisible packets were rendering beautiful interfaces. And this kicked off the ruthless browser wars of the 90s. A panicked Microsoft declared all-out war, building Internet Explorer and bundling it for free with Windows, which was already on like 90% of computers. That aggressive move famously got Microsoft sued by the US government for being a monopoly. But the damage was done. It completely crushed Netscape, though its ashes were eventually scattered to the open-source gods and reborn as Firefox.
Meanwhile, how were normal, everyday people actually getting their hands on these packets of data? Mostly through a company called AOL, who basically carpet-bombed the planet with free trial CDs in the mail. If you were kidding the 90s, you definitely tried microwaving one of those at least once. But the reality of connecting back then was painfully, agonizingly slow. Your modem had to literally dial a phone number and scream into the copper line to make a digital handshake, modulating ones and zeros into these crazy audible tones. And you topped out at maybe 56 kilobytes per second. We're talking 8 long minutes just to download one single song. Plus, because it hijacked your telephone line, if anyone else in the house picked up the kitchen phone, their voice would dump onto the signal, the modems would completely panic, and your download would just flatline.
But despite those screeching modems, the late 90s triggered this massive digital gold rush. Everyone suddenly realized you could make real money on this packet switch network, or at least convince investors you were about to. Wall Street threw billions at literally anything with a .com in the name. Companies were leasing out these massive, expensive servers, just waiting for a tidal wave of web traffic that simply never showed up. I mean, the business models were completely absurd. You had one company selling pet food online that blew its entire war chest on a sock puppet Super Bowl ad. Another company offered to drive a single candy bar directly to your front door for free. Absolutely none of it was sustainable. The market just ignored reality entirely. Until March of 2000, when the dot-com bubble violently popped, the NASDAQ crashed and thousands of companies vanished overnight. Out of that financial wreckage, though, a few rugged survivors crawled out and basically built the modern era. 2 guys named Larry and Sergey came up with the PageRank algorithm, treating hyperlinks as votes to logically organize all those messy packets, and eventually built a massive money printer called Google. Then we got Web 2.0. Under the hood, a clever little trick called Ajax allowed websites to quietly fetch packets of data in the background without refreshing the whole page. Finally, websites felt like smooth, dynamic apps. Then, in 2007, civilization kind of peaked. A guy named Mark handed everyone a social printing press, and a guy named Steve pulled a shiny little rectangle out of his pocket. The iPhone brought a real, full-blown browser with an always-on cellular connection to the masses. That network of packets had officially escaped our desks and moved right into our pockets. But sadly, this incredible cascade of packet-switched innovation definitely has a dark side today. I mean, we perfected the art of sending data resiliently, but look at what we're actually sending now. To read a simple article today, which, let's be honest, probably wasn't even written by a human, you have to pay the modern web toll. You gotta accept the cookies, decline the newsletter pop-up, dismiss the app download nag, and then sit there and wait for 10 megabytes of bloated JavaScript to load. We took Paul Baran's brilliant, streamlined military survival tool, and we turned it into an absolute obstacle course of digital slop. And that brings us right to the bleeding edge of today. Visionaries like Sam and Dario are currently feeding this entire massive web of packets into thinking rocks, tricking them into thinking harder than they ever have before, just to rent the internet back to us at a premium through AI. But here's the silver lining. While some folks are definitely filling the internet with more AI-generated slop, others are brilliantly using AI to clean things up. For instance, developers are using awesome tools like CodeRabbit to intelligently make sense of the chaos and actually clean up all that code-based slop. So let's look at the big picture. We started with isolated thinking rocks and a very real fear of nuclear war.
That fear pushed us to invent packet switching, dicing data into pieces so it could survive literally anything. We scaled it up with universal languages, we gave it a graphical web, we stuffed it into our pockets, and yes, we bloated it with commerce. Which leaves us with this final, thrilling question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. After 70 years of perfecting exactly how to chop up and send all of human knowledge as tiny, resilient packets of data, what happens to our world now that artificial intelligence is consuming every single one of them? It's a massive paradigm shift, for sure. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and keep learning.